Episode 7, How Fear Keeps People in.
Have you ever looked at someone, or maybe even yourself, and wondered why they're still in a group or a church they don't really seem to believe in anymore? It's a really tough question. And the answer, well, it's a lot deeper than you might think. We're going to get into the powerful and often totally invisible role that fear plays in keeping people locked in.
So let's just start with this pretty blunt idea. For a whole lot of people in these situations, it's not about conviction anymore. It's not about faith. Something else is driving the bus.
And that something is fear. This is the absolute core of what we're going to unpack. And look, this has nothing to do with being weak or lacking courage. It's about a very real, very powerful emotion that gets used, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not, as a tool of control.
And these fears are so potent because they're so personal, right? I mean, it's the fear of being wrong after you've poured your whole life into something. It's that gut punch fear of losing your friends, your family, your entire community. And then there's that deep spiritual fear of letting God down. And of course, the big one, the terrifying unknown of what life even looks like if you step outside.
So, how in the world does this fear get so deep inside of us? Well, it's not like there are signs on the walls saying, "You better be afraid." No, it's much slicker than that. It's actually woven right into the language of the system itself. Let's look at how that actually works.
Do any of these sound familiar? You hear something like, "You're covered here," and it sounds so safe, so comforting. But what's the real message? The real message is, it's not safe out there, or outside this place is dangerous. They're literally painting the rest of the world as a threat that only they can protect you from. Each one of these little phrases builds a brick in a psychological wall that makes leaving feel not just like a bad idea, but a genuinely dangerous one.
And this is the trap it creates. It's a psychological loop. It starts with something totally normal, doubt. You question a teaching, you wonder about a decision. But right away, the system jumps in and reframes that healthy doubt as a spiritual danger. So you learn, step 3, that being quiet gets you rewarded. But asking questions, that gets you punished, maybe with a concerned talking to, or just being subtly pushed to the margins. And after you go through that cycle enough times, you land at the end. Staying, even with all your questions, just feels emotionally safer than fighting for the truth.
And the result of that loop is something we can call emotional captivity. This is so important to get. It's that point where the main reason you're staying isn't love. It's not truth. It's not even real faith anymore. It's just to get some relief from the anxiety that the system itself is causing. You're staying just to make the fear go away.
Okay, so after looking at how these fear-based systems work, you gotta ask the big question. How does any of this square with the Bible? I mean, what does Jesus' model actually look like? Let's put them side by side because the contrast is, well, it's pretty shocking.
Just look at the two columns here. On one side, you've got the fear-based system. It threatens you with abandonment, with spiritual danger. It punishes you for asking hard questions. But then you look at Jesus' way. He motivates people with truth. He inspires people to follow him because they want to, not because they're terrified of what will happen if they don't.
And that brings us to this critical point. It's so important. Fear-based obedience is not faith. It's just survival. When you're just trying not to get in trouble, when you're just trying to avoid the consequences, that's a survival instinct. It's not faith. And Scripture is actually crystal clear about this. You know, you look at the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace. Fear is nowhere on that list. You read in 1 John that perfect love literally drives out fear, like they can't even exist in the same room. And we're told that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So when fear becomes the main thing keeping you in line, something has gone really, really wrong.
So if fear is so opposite to what the Bible teaches, why is it so ridiculously effective? Why does it work so well to control people? Well, the answer is simple. It's because fear doesn't attach itself to small things. It latches on to the things that matter most in our lives. Just think about it. These systems are brilliant at linking your obedience to everything you care about, your family, your identity, your whole sense of purpose, even your eternity. When the stakes are that high, just asking a question can feel like you're gambling with everything you love.
So just understanding this whole dynamic, this psychological grip, that's the first step. But what's the way out? How do you actually break the cycle? It all starts with taking back your own agency. It starts by giving yourself permission to do the exact things the system told you were so dangerous. So consider this your official permission slip. You are not required to fear asking honest questions. You are absolutely not required to fear taking a step back to breathe and process what you're really feeling. And you are not required to fear leaving an environment that is doing you harm. That's not rebellion. That's self-preservation. That's wisdom. Here's the thing about fear. It thrives in the dark. It loves secrets and uncertainty and unanswered questions. But it cannot survive in the light. Truth is like a floodlight that exposes fear for what it is, a tool of control, not a sign of God's protection. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time analyzing the problem, right? We've taken the whole engine apart. Now for the most important part. Let's talk about putting it back together. Let's talk about a real path forward, with some practical steps you can actually take. And we're going to ground this whole path in one core idea from Scripture. There is no fear in love. Perfect love drives out fear. Think of that as your diagnostic tool. If fear is a constant nagging presence in your spiritual life, it's a giant red flag that love is being misrepresented, period. The two just don't go together. So here's a question I want you to take with you, to really sit with and be honest about. Have I ever stayed somewhere? A church, a relationship, a job? Not because I really believed in it, but simply because the fear of leaving felt worse than the pain of staying? Just asking that question is powerful. And here's one super practical thing you can do this week. Just start to notice. Pay attention to the messages you're hearing. Which sermons, which conversations, which ideas make you feel more anxious? And which ones, even if they're challenging, bring a sense of clarity, of peace? That difference tells you everything, because God's voice, we're told, brings peace. Welcome to Raw Revelation. This channel exists because Hosea 4:6 was not written to the world. It was written to the priests. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. We expose false doctrine not to tear faith down, but to return it to the way Jesus actually taught. Here, we live by one rule. No tradition above truth. No system above Scripture. No demands placed on people that Jesus never placed himself. If this helped you, share it. Someone you love may be trapped and doesn't know how to say it yet. Subscribe if truth matters more to you than comfort, because here we sow truth the way Jesus taught, not the way man demands.